All right, AP Psych. So this is the second and final part to classical conditioning. So last time we talked about the elements, who did it, why it was created. Now we're looking for more how the process of acquiring or learning the behavior is going to work. So the principles of classical conditioning, this is kind of like just a how to do it. Like if you needed a manual of how to train a dog, how to train a cat, how to train a person through classical conditioning, this would be the basics. So the first principle is acquisition. This is when the learning occurs. So basically what is happening with acquisition is your parent, Pavlov's pairing the bell and the food, the bell and the food, the bell and the food. Eventually the food is taken away and the bell is just rung. So, so to demonstrate that this is learning is happening, when the bell rings, and signals the food, the dog starts to acquire, okay, this bell is associated with the food. So as soon as the dog makes that connection, and then when the food is taken away and the bell is rung and the dog drools without the food, it has acquired the behavior. Acquisition is just a fancy term for the behavior is learned. It's been programmed, it's been practiced. But this is when learning occurs. So when the dog drools at the bell and not the food, the association's made, and now the behavior, the action, the response is acquired. For the best timing, the conditioned stimulus should come before the unconditioned. Like you don't want to give the dog food and then ring the bell. Once the dog has the food, it doesn't care about the bell. You can bring in a marching band. It's probably just going to growl at the band because it doesn't want the band to take its food. So for it to work best, condition before unconditioned. Stimulus generalization. So with little practice, anything that sounded like a bell, the dog would get confused and then respond with the salivation or the drooling. So here's basically stimulus generalization. You are going to experience this in school as when you take a multiple choice test and all the answers seem correct, you have experienced generalization. You can't discriminate between the correct and incorrect answer. How do you solve that? Extra practice, extra studying, extra experience. So to stop generalization from happening, what did Pavlov have to do? Just continue to work with the dogs. Stimulus discrimination, next step. So with enough practice, generalization is done, and now the dog can discriminate against tones. Eventually what happened was only certain tones, certain pitches would trigger the dog to drool. So it takes practice, but it can discrimination, it can be achieved through practice itself. Just like if you nail a multiple choice test and you prepared well, you knew all the answers jumped out at you, that's stimulus discrimination. Extinction, like we said, learned behavior is relatively permanent. So eventually in the world, you're not going to have to raise your hand to talk. You're not going to have to ask to go to the bathroom. So as you stop needing those behaviors will become extinct and not be responded with. So the dog stops salivating at the bell. Why? Because the dog knows now the food's not coming every time the bell rings. And basically why this has occurred is the stimuli are not paired together anymore. Spontaneous recovery. This again demonstrates the relatively permanent. A behavior can reappear, like the dogs after not drooling at a bell for months. Eventually a bell was rung and all of a sudden they started drooling again. Note, extinction has to occur. This comes back, but it's going to randomly go away again. Like if you've ever raised your hand at the dinner table to speak, especially after high school and college are over, spontaneous recovery. So how do we learn through classical conditioning? The only thing that really can prevent an organism from learning is a biological constraint. Like you can't teach a human to fly because the human doesn't have hollow bones and it doesn't have wings. You can't teach a dog to speak. You can teach it to bark, but you couldn't teach a dog to speak English because it doesn't have the vocal structure, the vocal cord there, than the voice box structure to elicit those sounds. It's like you couldn't teach a dog to have correct language because it doesn't have the vocal cord structure for Wernicke's area or the Broca's area itself. And the other thing that learning through classical conditioning underestimates is doesn't account for the cognitive process. Why doesn't he account for the cognitive process? Because again, he couldn't study it, couldn't see it, he couldn't quantify it, so why study it? So Pavlov's legacy, the good, shows how virtually all organisms adapt and learn to their environment. Classical conditioning, the environment gives us a stimuli, then we pair a response with it. So he studies earthworms, fish, dogs, humans, and monkeys, and they can all learn through classical conditioning, and they can all learn the same way that it is environmentally driven. Shows how the study of learning can be studied objectively, data recorded, data analyzed. How long did the dog drool? How much saliva did the dog produce? The bad, he mistreats, he abuses, he mutilates those dogs. He starves those dogs to get better results. Obviously, the ethics in the 1900s, 1900 to 1920 was vastly different between 2020. He doesn't put enough emphasis on the cognitive and mental process because he can't study it. And in fairness to Pavlov with this, there was no way he could account for it. So obviously we have to look at Pavlov through a different lens than today's lens because those don't match up. Applications of classical conditioning. John Watson, who's considered the father of behaviorism and psychology, one of the reasons he's originally a psychologist, Pavlov wasn't. This guy's also American, capitalist, democratic, as opposed to Pavlov, who's from a more communist country. So what Watson does is he basically just takes Pavlov's principles and applies it to human. First thing he does is he becomes an advertising exec and shows people how to associate a brand with a specific product, like Maxwell House Coffee, the coffee break in America, that became a custom. That's also why Maxwell House Coffee is still one of the most profitable coffee brands in America. And anytime you think of a dominant brand for a product, you've been conditioned. If it's Nike for athletic gear, if it's soccer, if it's Adidas for soccer gear, if it's Starbucks for coffee, classical conditioning. He also, from your reading, you'll hear about the Little Albert, which shows how humans and fear are conditioned. This is hugely unethical. We'll talk about it. I'll show you a video on it, but we do learn a lot from it. But vastly, greatly unethical, especially to humans and babies. That's it.